This is the story of a beautiful girl named Sara who lived in a village called Panchtira. Her beauty was famous far and wide. Every prominent family in the village wanted her as their daughter-in-law. Anyone who saw her would be left mesmerized, singing praises of her charm. Gradually, tales of her beauty reached every man in the village, and everyone began dreaming of marrying her. One day, some young men were sitting near an old tree in the village, joking and laughing. When the topic of Sara came up, they began sighing, wishing she could be their wife. Unbeknownst to them, a Jinn resided in that very tree. He had been silently listening to everything. Hearing about Sara's beauty stirred a desire in the Jinn's heart too. He wished to witness her beauty himself. The more the boys spoke, the more curious the Jinn became. Eventually, the young men left, laughing and chatting. Sara had 2 elder sisters, but they did not resemble her in any way. They lacked the charm that Sara possessed, and this difference made them jealous. Every marriage proposal that came for Sara. Even the ones originally meant for the elder sisters would be redirected once. Sara was seen. Sara had now become an obstacle in their path. Bitterness grew in their hearts, and they began to treat her poorly. Her parents, noticing this tension, thought it would be best to marry Sara off before the elder daughters, so that it wouldn't create more problems in finding suitable matches for them. Sara had grown up, and her parents were deeply concerned about her marriage. They often invited matchmakers home in hopes of finding a good proposal for her. Sara's parents wanted to finalize a marriage proposal for her as soon as possible, so they could fulfill their responsibilities and then focus on getting their other 2 daughters married. Rich families from outside the village started sending proposals, but Sara's parents were hesitant. They felt unworthy of those matches. Sara's beauty had now become a problem. Young men began circling her house just to catch a glimpse of her, making it difficult for the girls in the house to go outside. Her sisters constantly taunted her, blaming her for all the trouble. Sara often felt sad and wondered, what have I done wrong? Why is everyone treating me this way? One day, as she was on her way to the market, a group of boys began harassing her, staring, making inappropriate remarks. She started walking faster, trying to escape. Suddenly, one of the boys rushed ahead and grabbed her hand. Sara panicked and tried to break free, but couldn't. People around started to gather and watch. Sara screamed, "Let go of my hand," but the boy and his friends just laughed. At that moment, a handsome young man with a radiant, noble face stepped out of the crowd. He swiftly pulled Sara's hand away from the harasser. Sara immediately ran from the scene. The gang of boys, now annoyed, attacked the young man, but to everyone's shock, he alone knocked all 5 of them down in a single move. Realizing his strength, the boys fled in fear. The next day, a neighbor woman visited Sara's house and told her parents everything that had happened, how the young man had stood up for their daughter and defeated all 5 goons. Sara thought to herself, I had assumed all boys were the same. The neighbors said, good that someone good received goodness in return. But after they left, Sara was scolded heavily at home. Her family told her not to step out much from now on. Sad, she went to her room and sat by the window that opened into the street. With sorrowful eyes, she quietly watched people passing by. Suddenly, a boy appeared in front of her window. She was stunned. It was that boy. Fear struck her. What if someone sees him? There'll be a huge commotion. She had already caused enough trouble that day. She quickly got up to leave, but just then, the boy called out, Sara. She stopped in her tracks. How do you know my name? She asked, with a soft smile. He replied, who in this village doesn't know Sara's name? Sara stared at him, astonished. His face was magnetic and radiant, and she couldn't look away. She asked, why did you come to my house? That's not right. I thought you were a good person, and you're doing, what other boys do." The boy smiled again. "You went inside without saying thank you," he said gently. "I just came for that." Sara was surprised. The next moment, the boy added, "While pulling you away that day, your bracelet had fallen. I came to return it. I don't follow girls, nor do I ever harass them." With those words, he handed her the bracelet and quietly left. Sara felt relieved. She had assumed he would trouble her too, but thankfully, he turned out to be a good person. She closed the window and returned to her room, but his face kept lingering in her mind all day, his words echoing in her ears. She tried to shake the thoughts off, but again and again, she found herself lost in his memory. The next day, when Sara went to the seamstress to pick up some clothes, she was shocked to see the same boy already there. Surprised, she asked, "You here?" The boy immediately got nervous and said, "I swear, I'm not following you." The boy nervously said, "I came here before you, I wasn't following you." Sara barely managed to hide her smile and replied, "I didn't mean it that way." Both smiled and walked off in their separate directions. Sara quickly returned home with the clothes, as some guests were coming to see her for a marriage proposal, and she had to get ready as soon as she got home. She quickly dressed up and sat waiting for the guests. When they arrived, Sara brought out refreshments to serve, but froze when she saw the man sitting in front of her. "This is the man who came with a proposal for me," she thought in shock. In front of her was a large-built, wealthy-looking man, about her father's age, with 3 little girls beside him. After the guests left, her parents started talking in concern. Her father said, "What should we do? We're tired of looking. We can't find a decent match for Sara. This man is wealthy and wants to marry her, but he's too old. Sara is still so young," her mother replied, "and her 2 elder sisters are still unmarried. I'm afraid they'll suffer because of Sara's beauty. We're already so worried." Hearing all this, Sara burst into tears and went to sit by the window again. Her thoughts wandered to that boy. Her heart longed for him to appear again, to simply talk to him, to share what she was feeling. "There's something about him," she thought, "some strange attraction that I can't explain." And just as she was thinking about him, there he was, standing quietly outside her window. Sara was startled. "How is this possible? I was just thinking about him, and now he's here." The boy looked at her gently and asked, "Are you sad?" Sara couldn't answer. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She quickly shut the window and ran into her room. There, she cried her heart out. Once she quieted down, she heard voices coming from her parents' room. Curious, she stepped out to see who had arrived now. Sara was shocked to see him. It was the same boy, but how had he entered the house? And why were Uma and Abba speaking to him so warmly, as if they already knew him? Confused, Sara went to her room and asked Abba, "Abba, who is he?" Abba laughed and said, "He's my friend. A few days ago, I met him on the road and he helped me carry my belongings. He has just recently moved to our village. Now go and bring him something to eat." Sara went and freshly prepared some bread and vegetables and brought it to him. The boy ate to his heart's content, and after taking permission from Abba, he left. After he left, Sara overheard Abba saying, "Zephyr is a good and kind-hearted boy. I wish he would marry our Sara and ease our burdens." Hearing this filled Sara with a strange sense of comfort, as if someone had voiced the desire hidden deep within her heart. Suddenly, everything seemed to fall into place. She saw a ray of hope, and her heart felt lighter and happier. The next morning, while Sara was returning home with Uma's medicines, she met Zafar again. When their eyes met, a sparkle appeared in both their gazes. They looked so lovely together, almost as if they were made for each other. While talking, they didn't even realize when they had reached the old tree near the village. They sat under it to catch their breath and continued chatting. Sara was thoroughly enjoying spending time with Zafar. She was absorbed in listening to him, thinking how different and kind he was compared to other boys. In the middle of their conversation, Zafar told Sara, "What people say about you is true. You are exceptionally beautiful, but even more beautiful is your heart." It was as if Sara had been waiting her whole life to hear these words. Her eyes sparkled with happiness, gathering courage. Sara told Zafar what Abba had said about him. Zafar smiled and said, "I wish it were possible." Sara, surprised, asked, "Why isn't it possible? Am I not good enough?" Zafar replied. Smiling, Zafar said, "I am much older than you." Sara asked, "How much older?" Zafar replied, 900 years. Sara burst into loud laughter. From that day on, it felt like Sara was under Zafar's spell. Day and night, she would find excuses just to see his face. Whenever they met, they would sit under the old tree and talk for hours. Losing track of time, Sara had never been this happy before. She truly believed that Zafar was the solution to all her troubles. His presence made everything feel easier, lighter, and more beautiful. Whenever she missed him, she would go to the old tree, and somehow, Zafar would always be there. Even Zafar seemed to grow fond of spending time with her. He began following Sara around like someone deeply enchanted. He visited her house often, and his bond with Amma and Abba grew stronger. Amma and Abba started treating Zafar like their own son. It felt as if he had become an inseparable part of their family. Every afternoon, he would eat lunch at Sara's house and even help out with household chores, as if it was his own home. However, Sara often noticed that whenever marriage was mentioned, Zafar would dodge the topic, making jokes instead, although it was clear he liked her deeply. One day, Sara said to him, "My heart doesn't feel at peace without you anymore. Let's get married." Hearing this, the brightness in Zafar's face dimmed. Sara repeated, "We love each other. If we don't marry, Abba will arrange my marriage elsewhere." Hearing this, tears welled up in Zafar's eyes. Without saying a word, he stood up and left. Lost in thought, Sara kept wondering the whole way home, why was Zafar acting like this? Even after reaching home, she remained absent-minded, without eating or drinking anything. She lay down on her bed, thinking endlessly. She wondered if she was trapped in a one-sided love, if perhaps she was forcing herself onto Zafar, becoming a burden. She thought for a long time, and finally, she made a decision.
Sara thought to herself that if she and Zafar couldn't get married, then there was no point in meeting him anymore. Lost in these thoughts, she fell asleep. But when she woke up the next morning, the thought of Zafar saddened her. She knew she wouldn't be meeting him anymore, and the whole day felt off. Nothing seemed to bring her joy. She couldn't focus on anything. Meanwhile, Zafar spent the whole day under the old tree, waiting for Sara. Abba asked, "What's wrong today?" Zafar didn't come for lunch. Sara felt even more worried when she heard this. It had been 3 days, and she hadn't stepped outside the house. Zafar hadn't come to eat either. She had no news of him, and her mind was restless. In the evening, Abba and Amma were talking about how they had gone to check on Zafar at his house to see if he was okay. But as feared, Zafar was very ill and couldn't even get out of bed. This news made Sara furious with herself. She immediately ran to his house to check on him. Zafar was indeed very sick, his body burning with fever. Sara took care of him, gave him food and water, and then went back home. She went every day, bringing him food, giving him medicine, and quietly leaving afterward. During this time, they both remained silent, acting like strangers. Sara couldn't bear this silence anymore. She decided she had to speak up. "Why are you doing this? If you like me this much, why don't we get married? And if you can't marry me, why not tell me clearly?" Zafar took her hand and led her to the old tree. He sat her down beneath it and asked, "Would you like to hear a story?" Sara nodded. Zafar pointed to the tree and said, "This tree, like me, is very old. This is my home, he continued. One day, I overheard some people talking about your beauty outside my home. I couldn't resist. I wanted to see you. Zafar continued. I came to see you, but I got trapped in your love, and I didn't even realize it. The moment I saw you, I couldn't stay away. My people, in my village, punished me for falling in love with a human. Loving you has become a crime. You can't come to my world, and I won't be allowed to enter yours. I am Zafar, a jinn, and I am 900 years old. I am not so selfish that, for my heart's desire, I would separate you from your world and ask you to live a life you don't deserve. Sara looked at Zafar in astonishment and then suddenly burst into laughter. She said, "Humans are good at making excuses. If you can't marry me, just say it clearly. No need to make up stories. I'll never force myself onto you. Yes, it's true that if I can't marry you, I'll never marry anyone, but I won't become a burden on you." With that, Sara stood up and began to leave, when suddenly, an icy, cold hand grabbed hers. Sara turned around and saw Zafar standing before her, now in his true form. Sara stared at him with wide eyes, unable to believe what she was seeing. What Zafar had told her a few moments ago seemed impossible to be true. And yet here he was. Sara fainted, and when she regained consciousness, she was back in her room. Her family surrounded her. Sara asked, "How did I end up here?" Umar, looking surprised, replied, "What do you mean? How did you end up here? You've been sleeping here since last night. How long were you going to sleep? Get up and eat." Later, when Sara went to eat, just like any other day, Zafar joined them. For lunch, Sara looked at Zafar in shock. She couldn't understand if what had happened yesterday was a dream or reality. After lunch, Zafar excused himself, and not long after, Sara went to meet him again. Zafar asked, "Aren't you scared to be meeting a jinn?" Sara replied, "I used to meet you before," Zafar said. "Before, it was different. You didn't know the truth," Sara responded. "There's no difference between before and now. I loved you then, and I still love you. My love for you remains the same." Zafar looked at Sara, astonished. This was the first time he was meeting a human who wasn't scared of him. "I can't see you in pain," Zafar said in a soft voice. Sara smiled and replied, "Then maybe I'll just die because your separation will not let me live," Zafar said. "Don't be foolish, Sara. You are a human." Sara responded, "Well, you should have thought about this before coming into my life. Now is not the time to think about all that. If you want me to live, then marry me. Either take me to your world or come to mine. Both are fine with me." Sara's words left Zafar deep in thought. Living without Sara was no longer possible for him, and it was also impossible for these two different beings to stay together. One of them had to lose their world. Zafar thought, "If a sacrifice has to be made, then I will make it, because I am the one who committed the sin of love." Sara is innocent. Zafar decided to get Sara's two older sisters married to good families, and, like a son, helped Abba and Umma with the wedding preparations. He found good matches for both sisters, collected dowries, and arranged for money to cover the wedding expenses. After the weddings, Zafar asked Abba and Umma for Sara's hand in marriage. Abba and Umma, who had always wished to see Zafar as their son-in-law, happily agreed. But Zafar set one condition: "I will marry Sara 1 year from now. I want to go to the city, make something of myself, and arrange everything for our wedding. Until then, please keep Sara safe as my trust." Abba and Umma agreed, and Zafar went back to his village. For Sara, waiting for this year became incredibly difficult. She spent her days and nights waiting for Zafar, thinking about when the year would end. After much waiting, the year was finally over, and Sara's long wait was almost over. She was ecstatic, knowing Zafar would finally return, and her waiting would come to an end. The wait seemed unbearable now. Sara found it even harder to pass the time. Umma and Abby's health began to deteriorate. and their only concern was that they would fulfill their responsibility towards Sara in their lifetime. A year and 6 months passed, but Zafar still hadn't returned. Everyone began to worry. Sara was consumed by fear, wondering what would happen if Zafar never came back. Umar and Abba, too, started to have doubts, asking themselves if Zafar had deceived them. The situation at home worsened, and Abba could no longer work as he used to. He didn't have the strength to put in the same effort. Finally, Umar and Abba decided they could not wait any longer and made up their minds to marry Sara to someone else. They could not delay any further. When Sara heard this, she was devastated. She ran to the old tree, crying there, and started questioning loudly, "You deceived me, didn't you? Why did you do this to me? If you were going to leave, why did you let me go through all the pain of waiting and hoping?" While Sara was crying uncontrollably, she suddenly felt the same fragrance that Zafar used to carry. She became quiet for a moment. As she turned around, she saw Zafar standing behind her with a smile on his face, listening to her words. He had returned after serving his punishment. Now, he was an ordinary human. He no longer had the powers of the Jinn, and his tasks could no longer be completed with a snap of his fingers. He had been exiled from his world. Zafar had sacrificed his world and had promised to return to Sara. Now, living as an ordinary human was no less than a challenge. He had to work hard, struggle, and hustle like any other person. But for Sara, he was ready to do everything joyfully. Soon, they got married and spent their lives together, supporting each other through their love. Today, after losing everything, Zafar felt more at peace than ever, because the peace he found with Sara was more valuable than any power or treasure.